Welcome. You're listening to Sons and Kings, the Psalm 2 show where we unlock the Church's ancient battle cry of divine filiation and embrace the gentle kingship of Christ through the riches of the Christian tradition. Happy Tuesday. Let's begin. Welcome back to another episode of Sons and Kings, the Psalm 2 show. Here as always with Pat and Lewis. How you guys doing today?
Doing great, Jake. Good to see you.
It's a beautiful day.
Beautiful day. Good to have you guys here. So we're diving into verse 7 here. So Pat, would you give us that?
I will announce his decree. The Lord has said to me, "You are my son. This day have I begotten you."
Could you read it one more time?
I will announce his decree. The Lord has said to me, "You are my son. This day have I begotten you."
All right. So we were talking before the show. We kind of want to jump a little bit into the historical aspect to this verse. And Pat, I think you put it really well. What does this verse mean? What would it have meant to a faithful Jewish person 1,000 years before Christ? If they heard this psalm, what would it have meant?
Yeah, the central challenge I think to that is this day have I begotten you. Because obviously, how can the speaker of the psalm have been begotten that day and by God? What would that have meant to, as you said, a Jewish person at this time? And I think some helpful historical context. Pope Benedict, in his homily on the Nativity of the Lord, this verse is, I think, the entrance antiphon for the Mass of the Nativity of the Lord during Christmas Eve, I think, for the Christmas Eve Mass. And he describes the historical context in which this verse would have been a part. He says that this psalm was once a part of the coronation rite of the kings of Judah. The people of Israel, in virtue of its election, considered itself in a special way a son of God, adopted by God. Just as the king was the personification of the people, his enthronement was experienced as a solemn act of adoption by God, whereby the king was in some way taken up into the very mystery of God. And so this verse, "This day have I begotten you," refers to the adoption of the king of Israel by God, that he has chosen this people, and the king, as the personification of the people, is in some way a son of God. This usage of the Hebrew word, the begotten, that means begotten in English, it is not usually used in this context. Usually it means a mother giving birth. In the dictionary that I looked at, it's only here at Psalm 2, verse 7, that it means formally installing a king into his theocratic rights, his God-given right as king. So I think that's kind of interesting as a kind of a unique usage of the word. But I think it's helpful to understand that in these 6 verses leading up to this climax, this turning point of the psalm, there's the people in rebellion, and there's God's in anger, and then there's establishment of a king. And a lot of that speaks to power and struggle and animosity in relationship to God. But in this verse, we kind of see that it's not about power. It's about relationship. And that the king's adoption by God, that's the core relationship. It's not anger. It's not rebellion. It's sonship. And that's really the turning point for the psalm that answers all the concerns of the first 6 verses and then will lead to some important consequences for the next 5. And so I think that's also helpful to think about the context of the whole psalm and understanding how this would have been historically understood. And then also it will lead to some important consequences as the verse continues. So that kind of the rite of coronation and the establishment of the king as this true son of God, and relationship as being the core theme of this psalm, relationship in a filial way with God. That's the historical meaning pre-Jesus that's spoken of in this verse.
Yeah, to build on that, we can be so familiar with the father-son element of God's relationship, but in the Old Testament, this was like so new, like this notion, and you even see it as early as Exodus, where God reveals himself to Moses, and obviously Moses is, if we've all seen the movie The Prince of Egypt, if you haven't read the book of Exodus, you can see how intense it is. It's such a powerful moment. That's a fantastic movie. But in that, after that kind of revelation where God appears to Moses, obviously Moses is struggling to understand how he is going to be able to do this. And when God is giving him further instruction of what he should do, this is Exodus 4:22. He says, "Then you shall say to Pharaoh, 'Thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn son. I said to you, let my son go that he may worship me. But you refuse to let him go. Now I will kill your firstborn son.'" And I just think that's so powerful, because just like you were talking about, and Pope Benedict was talking about it also, like God was always so different than the relationship people had with other divinities or ideas of divinity in that time. Like he wanted a personal, intimate relationship with the people, and he was We talked about like the anger of God. He had jealous love for his people, even his firstborn son Israel. Then we see that in the psalm transferred and talked about in the person of the king who was coronated in this coronation. The Lord said to me, "You are my son. This day I have begotten you." But we see it's like an echo of what he's also said already to the people. I just find that to be so beautiful. And then to add to that too, if you look at it chronologically in terms of the Psalms, this would be around 2 Samuel 7. It says at the beginning of this chapter, David has destroyed his enemies on all sides. He has rest from his enemies on all sides. And now he's in his castle essentially, and he's kind of kicking it up, chilling. And then Nathan comes, the prophet, and he gives this really beautiful prophecy. And it's just so powerful to think that that's also God the Father's voice coming through Nathan to give him this like after this struggle, this fight, this battle, like now I'm just coming to give you some consolation. I'm coming to pat you on the back, son. Good job. Like
Mhm.
we're gonna keep going. But one of the desires that David had was to build a house and stuff like that, and he had all these desires in his heart. But Samuel says this: when your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring after you, who shall come forth from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be a father to him, and he shall be a son to me. And so you even see that prophecy there, just like we see the prophecy in this verse of the Psalm speaking into the future. A son of David, right, will be a son of God also, right? You see that kind of being prophesied even historically. Now, would they have drawn those links, right? It's so clearly there. But I think the consistent theme, as Patrick was saying, is there of this relationship between God and his people, God and his chosen person of Father, Son, you know, in some way that's mysteriously happening throughout the life of the people of Israel.
Absolutely. I'm really struck by the imagery of the king being a personification of the whole people. And as such, as an ordinary citizen, as you know, Joe Blow on the streets of Jerusalem,
Joe
the
Blow, Joe Blow the Israeli.
then in this case, he can identify himself with the king, right? He is already in relationship with this king as a representative of the people, and he gets to participate in that relationship. Then the next level between God and the king as son of God. And we can see that in some other instances, even today, where there's a fierce sense of identity between a follower and a leader, and you know you have this very substantive relationship. And then it's very cool to think about, okay, I get to participate even though like I'm not the king, but this king represents me. So that's a kind of a neat idea I think that's drawn out there.
Yeah, yeah, that is interesting. And I think that this idea that the meaning of this words would not have been complete in its time and do become complete in time, in the fullness of time, I think is really interesting and helpful to reflect upon, right? So Pope Benedict continues that quotation that I was reading from earlier. He says that these words, which were really more an expression of hope than a present reality,
Mm.
took on new and unexpected meaning at Bethlehem night. And I think that's a beautiful thing that you wouldn't really understand what it meant. Maybe you'll have a little bit of an idea, but then what's given is new and unexpected and, far beyond what you could have imagined they would have meant. That actually there is a Trinity, and God the Son has come, and He is the King who's going to be established, and He will be born as a human being in a manger in Bethlehem. Kind of that whole mystery of the nativity and incarnation. And I think that's helpful to think about. God's promises to us are often are fulfilled in unexpected ways. The prophecy, what He has promised for us, sometimes may seem obscure, but when they're expressions of hope before present realities, you might not understand them. But then when they do become present realities, they are far beyond what we can imagine they are. And so this kind of foreshadowing typology of the Old Testament, which is fulfilled in a magnificent way, and the New Testament, I think applies also to the promises of God we've received in our own life, that they're going to be fulfilled in unexpected and new ways beyond what we can imagine they could be.
Yeah, I love the idea that of Pope Benedict talking about that it's more aspirational. It's a hope for thing at that time because you look at the history of the kings, right? Read Chronicles, read books of Kings. Like it's like you're just like, wow, like, there's especially thinking about how powerful it is that God's saying, like, these kings will be like my sons. And even this coronation hymn, right? Or the coronation psalm, you can imagine a king or the king of Israel, king of Judah has this read. And then we look at the lives of the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel. And we're like, oh man, that's a tough image of if that was what the image, right, just from what we know biblically, some of those images of a child of God, a son of God, what that would have meant would have been very scandalous, to say the least. I mean, child sacrifice, offering to many different gods, et cetera, et cetera. And so I love this idea, like even in the Old Testament history, like you would read this promise, you would read this call of God, of this call of sonship, you would read that and you'd be like, where's that at in terms of the life of people? And obviously not to call them out specifically, we can look at our own lives, right? But I love that it's clearly foreshadowing something to come, a fullness, a reality, something that's going to not be a shadow. It's going to be something that is the actuality. And that's just all throughout. But God's consistent with the language. He's consistent with the promise. Like he never gives up. His love and his fidelity as a father never wavers, even as people waver and people struggle to correspond, right, to what God's calling them to.
Yeah, I like that you're making that point. Is like to what extent are we as humans, and we can apply that, backwards in time as well as us in our own day. To what extent are we prepared to receive the fullness of the relationship that God is offering, right? This relationship of sonship. And to the point you were making, and Pat also, Pope Benedict, in a different place of Jesus of Nazareth, meditating on the trial of Jesus after he's arrested in the garden, he says this. The high priest questions Jesus about his messiahship and refers to it in terms of Psalm 2, using the expression, Son of the Blessed. He says, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? In this context of this question, this expression refers to the messianic tradition while leaving open the form of sonship involved. I was struck that the high priest himself is acknowledging that he doesn't quite understand the type of sonship that could be involved here. And so he's the high priest of Israel. So, even today, we're coming to more full and fuller understanding of Jesus' sonship and what this looks like. So to continue this next week here in Sons and Kings, we'll continue to dive deeper into verse 7.
Why this tumult among nations, among peoples this useless murmuring? They arise, the kings of the earth. Princes plot against the Lord and his anointed. Come, let us break their fetters. Come, let us cast off their yoke. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord is laughing them to scorn. Then he will speak in his anger. His rage will strike them with terror. It is I who have set up my king on Zion, my holy mountain. I will announce the decree of the Lord said to me, you are my son. It is I who have begotten you this day. Ask, and I shall bequeath to you the nations. Put the ends of the earth in your possession. With a rod of iron you will break them, shatter them like a potter's jar. Now, O kings, understand. Take warning, rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with awe and trembling. Pay him your homage, lest he be angry and you perish, for suddenly his anger will blaze. Blessed are they who put their trust in God.
Hey, this is Jake. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Sons and Kings, the Psalm 2 show. We're really glad that you joined us today. We hope you got something out of it. And if you did, I'd love to invite you to share with a friend, or even just like or subscribe to the platform. It really helps us to get the message out to more people, help more people with the show. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next episode.